Welcome into another episode of The Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. That's the main man right there. I'm Buck Reising. Happy to be back for this Week 10 edition. They certainly kept everybody up late on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs, Greg, but that was it was one of the better games. I mean, we've seen so many great games from that defense already, but a really interesting result and a fun game to watch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was, and when I watched the tape, particularly the defense, we'll get into that momentarily, but it was really a really good performance by the defense. It's funny. I watched the tape and I thought to myself, when I finished watching both sides, and there's a lot to sort of dissect on both sides, but I kind of came away with a very similar feeling to the way I felt after I watched their playoff loss to Cincinnati a year ago on tape. I felt like they played Titans football.
Yeah.
And they lost.
Yeah. It's kind of, you try not to draw too many grand assessments or any indictments of necessarily the style of play, because they have had more success than not. But we've talked about this before, specifically off that Bengals game. At a certain point, where are they going to be able to adjust to play a style that is going to lend itself more to beating a team like the Chiefs rather than just bludgeoning them and hope that that's enough to make up for the lack of what they're able to produce on the offensive side of the football? Was that the biggest parallel? Did you feel like when watching that back?
Well, obviously they're playing with Malik Willis, who made his second start. He's a rookie third-round pick. I think they understand, and most people do who study tape, that where he came from with the offense that he was asked to run in college did not really prepare him for the NFL. So he's learning totally on the fly. But the problem is there's only 17 of these games.
Yeah.
And he has to play. And, he played against a poor defense a week ago that had, by a pretty wide margin, the worst run defense in the league. So they could live with handing the ball off to Derrick Henry and control the game that way. And with their defense playing at a high level against an offense in Houston that was severely limited at the receiver position, and a young quarterback as well, and an offensive line that has issues, they could dominate that game. Now they played the Kansas City Chiefs, and you could argue that it was a defensive performance that was high level, and we'll discuss some of the specifics momentarily, but it's not likely you're going to win that game holding them to 10 or less. And they did really the best they could possibly do, and it was 17-9 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Which was pretty remarkable, but obviously it didn't turn out that way. And at some point, you have to score. And they ran less than 50 offensive plays, and it's really, really difficult to play when you run less than 50 offensive plays in the NFL. So, we can get into more specifics for sure right now, and we should, but Willis is playing, and when your quarterback, whoever your quarterback is, you do the best you can to minimize mistakes. Obviously, that's the last thing you want. But on the other hand, there also comes a time when you have to try to be a little aggressive because you do need to score.
Yeah, and that's just the perpetual problem with them, Greg, throughout the course of the season thus far. And obviously the Tannehill injury has played a part, the injuries at wide receiver, offensive line. But still, like you said, this is the style of football that they want to play, and they're going to, I feel like they're almost going to be, they're going to feel justified in going back and reviewing it because they were just right there with the Kansas City Chiefs and almost got the job done. But I guess let's start then with Willis, because while Tannehill, I just came from practice. Tannehill did more at practice than he has in the last 2 weeks. He's dealing with what appears to be a pretty significant ankle sprain. They haven't said high ankle sprain specifically, but it's clearly limiting him from being able to just simply do, not even just mobility, but just to be able to plant on his right foot, hitch up and get the ball out. But he did work a little more today. For Willis, though, Greg, it seems that they are comfortable enough, as you articulated there, operating basically with him not having a lot of involvement in the offense. They ran a little bit of zone read with Derrick Henry in the first half. It worked well. He had a couple of drop passes, two deep completions or two deep incompletions that would have helped them significantly, but still only completing 6 passes in the game to Patrick Mahomes' 43 completions.
Yeah, I mean, look, one can obviously say that he made an excellent throw to Hooper on the fade, the 18-yarder that took them down and set up a touchdown, the back shoulder throw, which allowed Hooper to beat good coverage by safety Thornhill. Really good throw. Arguably his best throw was the incompletion to Connolly, the big time throw on the fade on 3rd and 9 late in the second quarter. Connolly could not hold on. That was a great throw. But, in a sense, it's the fact that we're picking out one or two individual throws is problematic in and of itself. The larger issue is how they choose to play offense. Keep in mind that they played 15 snaps with 3 tight ends on the field. That was more than 31% of their overall offensive snaps. That says a lot right there. And then there's specific plays you can point to, okay? And then people can't see these plays because we're obviously doing, a podcast, but they're if you go to the fourth quarter, and this comes down as well to game management by the quarterback. I mean, there was a 2nd and 9 play from the Chiefs 38-yard line with less than 11 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. They had an 8-point lead at this point, less than 11 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. Now, Willis threw a fade to the boundary X Westbrook Ahini. I don't know if you remember this. It was incomplete.
Yeah, no, I for sure do.
Okay, now, if you look at that play, it was a 3-by-1 set, and Hooper ran what we call a Y stick. That's common to everybody. And it was 2nd and 9. You did not need a big play. And based on the pre-snap look of the defense, the Y stick was going to be wide open, and it was wide open.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing, that's the learning curve for a young quarterback. You have to throw the Y stick there. It's possible it would have gotten a first down too, because there was really nobody that was covering Hooper. They would have reacted to the throw and him catching it. So Willis must continue to learn more about game situations and game management. But then the very next play, keep in mind they're at the 38-yard line of the Chiefs. This tells you much of what you need to know about how the coaching staff sees him. The next play was 3rd and 9, okay? Not a ridiculously long amount to go for first down. Not ideal, but it's not like it was 3rd and 16.
Right.
And what do they call a screen? And if you recall, that was a 4-yard loss. So that tells you they don't want him in those kinds of situations to have to read progressions and make a throw. And that's telling. We don't have to interpret that, Buck. They're telling us that. So this is not, hey, this is my opinion. This is what they're telling you. They really don't want him to have to make those progression reads in critical situations. They're trying to play without him having to do that. And it's very hard to do that against good teams.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, Teron Davenport and I were sitting in the press box in Arrowhead looking at, I can't remember specifically the quarter, Greg, but they ran that bang play action concept with the wide receiver crosser that we know is a bread and butter play for them. We've seen them run it, with Corey Davis, with A.J. Brown, and they've had success. And Malik Willis, again, for the second week in a row, just doesn't see Westbrook Akina on the crosser and doesn't hit him for what would have been a 12 to 15 yard gain just on the catch alone. And as I think you said it last week, only Willis can answer why he didn't let that one go at this point. But this is something that clearly the coaching staff has identified and is trying to work around.
Yeah, and then right after the McCurdy interception, the first play, they went shot play concept out of heavy personnel, 6-0 line, 2 tight ends. They went mirrored crosses off play action. And Okonkwo was open, and he just threw it. It was a bad throw. It was an inaccurate throw. They took a shot there because they figured, hey, either we come out of the, it's early in the third quarter. We have an opportunity. We have an interception. We're winning the game. And hey, maybe we can hit a play. And it was there. And, those are the throws you have to make. But the larger question is that they don't want him to do very much at all. And you put yourself in situations like that Cincinnati game last year, by the way, when Tannehill was the quarterback, and like the game this past Sunday with Malik Willis. And, we can sit here and say it's understandable. And by the way, I want people to understand this is not a judgment about Malik Willis's career. I don't want people to think that, he's never going to be a good player.
Right.
That's not what we're saying. We're saying right now there's only 17 games in a season. Who knows about the Bills at this point with Josh Allen? We could find out that Josh Allen's out for the season, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
But the point is the way they play now, even if when Tannehill comes back, they need to find a way to manufacture and orchestrate plays. There's a lot of individual isolation routes with their receivers. Their receivers are not good enough to do that. And so they need to find a way to orchestrate and manufacture big play opportunities in the pass game. And when I say big play opportunities, I don't mean 50-yard throws. That's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about 20-yard throws.
Yeah. And they are desperately lacking for those just across the course of the season, as we've discussed many times. And certainly the Broncos are not going to be an easy test for theoretically if Willis was to go again.
No, they're a good defense. And by the way, they can't convert on third down either. That's another big issue.
Well, is there, I mean, obviously they're getting behind the sticks in certain circumstances. They're getting penalized at a far more frequent rate than I'm accustomed to seeing from Mike Vrabel teams. This particular officiating crew is the past one. Clete Blakeman, they do have a tendency to call more penalties than most other crews in the league, but still, is there anything though functionally on third down that they're doing incorrectly beyond when they get put in these disadvantageous positions by penalty or otherwise?
Well, I'm always leery of saying, hey, here's something I would like to see, because you know me well enough to know I don't spend my time ripping coaches. Okay. I don't do that because I know how hard coaches work, because I know what I do. Okay. I know how much tape I try to watch every single week. So I know what coaches do. But, just talking ball, I think one of the things when you have a young quarterback and a totally inexperienced quarterback, and it could be true with Tannehill too when he comes back, and I should add, when you have receivers who are not necessarily the kinds of receivers, Buck, that can win one-on-one,
right?
Because they don't really have those guys right now, is you need to create through your route concepts ways to get receivers open, whether it's motion, whether it's stacks, whether it's bunches, whether it's natural pick elements, ways that you can define a read and a throw for a quarterback. And also your receivers can get open based on the concept that they're not just having to win one-on-one. There's a lot of plays in critical situations where they run individual isolation routes, and then you're expecting your receivers to win. And you also have a quarterback who's not experienced enough in the NFL to understand what open is. He's used to college open, and college open and NFL open are worlds apart. So I'm just saying this is something I would like to see more of, and I think it would help everybody.
There's no disputing that, and that's been a talking point here locally for months at this point as they try and continue to figure out. Now, Treylon Burks was designated to return today, his first day back at practice, Greg, since he suffered turf toe at Indianapolis before the bye. So at least they'll have a few more bodies out there. But again, that does not really help them with the problems that they're having in scheming these guys open.
Right.
Thus far this season.
And Burks, again, we'll see when Burks comes back. Hopefully that he can contribute and at least be out there. And I think he's a talented guy who I think can be a good NFL player. I liked his college tape a lot. So we'll see. Certainly he's a big guy. He's a physical guy. He can run a little bit. So we'll see what happens. But, obviously they're playing a Denver team that's not been very good on offense. Yeah. They're near the bottom of the league in third downs, just like the Titans are. So they're not really sustaining offense either. We know when you do play Russell Wilson that he can make individual plays. They've been few and far between this year. Their run game has been up and down. So this has not been a team that, based on what they've done up to this point, they're coming off a bye. I'm sure they did some serious self-scouting, seeing what they feel they do well, what they are not doing well, and try to build upon what they do well. So I don't want to sit here and say, okay, they're only going to score 14 points. We don't know that. They have a quarterback whose track record in the NFL would be considered pretty good, so you never know. And they've got some quality receivers as well. So we do know that the Titans have a really, really good defense. I mean, this defense is fun to watch.
Well, let's talk about the job that they did on Mahomes, Greg, because like you said, I mean, they gave every last ounce of effort. They're getting contributions from dudes off the street. Mario Edwards is playing out of his mind.
Yep.
When Dupree goes down, like they're just out there clubbing people at the line of scrimmage, and they're doing it with 4 consistently. They have not really upped their blitz percentage at any point, and it's been their greatest advantage beyond winning those matchups up front.
I was going to say, I thought they had an outstanding game, especially given the number of snaps they had to play.
91
to 100 snaps when you count, penalties and also, I mean, I think they actually played 100 snaps when you count the penalties.
Yeah,
and there were 3 or 4 guys that played every snap. I mean, that's 2 weeks worth of football almost. And I think you hit it right on the head, Buck. Their 4-man D-line pass rush generated consistent pressure on Mahomes. He was not comfortable on many snaps in the game. I thought their mix of man and zone concepts was effective in making Mahomes have to mentally work after the snap. There were a lot of plays where he broke down for no reason, and you don't see that very often. And he missed some plays because of it. Don't forget, I know they won the game, obviously, and he threw 68 balls. He had more dropbacks than 68, but he threw 68 balls. And he made a couple of plays, but he was not a really comfortable player in this game.
No.
And he missed some. He left some throws on the field. He didn't turn some throws loose that were there. I loved what they did. They bracketed Kelsey, on certain occasions. They had different personnel packages. They played a big nickel with Kalu. They played conventional nickel. They played dime where they brought Johnson in. They did a lot of things and they did them well. And the key is they were able to generate pressure with 4.
Yeah, just no margin. We talked about the offensive, what they're struggling with offensively, and how it just leaves them no margin for error for when Patrick Mahomes just makes a crazy play and rushes on 3rd and 17 and converts on his own. It was reminiscent of what the last time we were in Kansas City, Greg, the AFC Championship game where Rashaan Evans just misses a tackle, Mahomes scores, and things start to snowball from there.
Well, it's funny you say that because on that given play, and you could argue that was the biggest or certainly one of the biggest plays in the game.
Yeah.
Because the Titans were leading 17-9 at the time, and you're thinking 3rd and 17, hey, advantage defense, we're going to get the ball back and maybe run some clock. Is Mahomes anticipated pressure on that. And he broke down in the pocket when there was no pressure. Yeah. So they had gotten to him by that point. He was breaking down in the pocket when there was no pressure on him whatsoever. And then, of course, he makes that run, and then you tip your hat. But, that was a huge, huge play in the game.
Well, they continue to be stout against the run, and Mahomes was certainly their leading rusher. But yeah, they really it was tough, Greg. We walked in the locker room afterwards, and Jeff Simmons just I've never seen him that physically, emotionally gassed because they did everything that they possibly could. Now, I mean, the way that this secondary is working together, you mentioned Josh Kalu, obviously no Amani Hooker in this one. We'll see what his status is for the upcoming game against the Broncos. But it looked like that big nickel package with Kalu as opposed to Hooker and Andrew Adams alongside Kevin Byard. It looks like they continue to find ways to win in those personnel packages.
Yeah, no, I mean, they started playing that with Hooker a number of weeks ago before he got hurt. And essentially that means a safety becomes your slot corner because that's the way it maps out. And that's the way they played it. And then, of course, as I said, they went conventional nickel where they brought Mitchell in at left corner, opposite Fulton at right corner, and McCreary became the slot corner. Then they had a dime package as well where, they played 24 snaps of dime where McCreary stayed in the slot. Johnson became the 3rd safety with Byard and Adams. So they had all these different packages, and they were all pretty successful. So it was kind of fun to watch. And again, they do not have to blitz. And, when you don't have to blitz to generate pressure, then you're playing with 7 in coverage. And so you have the numbers advantage. And I think for the most part, it played out in this game. There were not really any big plays in the passing game by the Chiefs. I mean, they got that fluky one in overtime, and I know it ended up leading to the winning field goal where he threw it up to Noah Gray. But the Hardman's 30-yarder was the last play of regulation. I mean, that was, a BS play. That wasn't a real play within the game. They didn't really have any big plays.
Yeah, no, if you'd have told me that they'd have limited the explosives by Kansas City that
Yeah.
way, I would have told you, Craig, that they did. They had a shot in that game up until the very end. So now a different kind of opponent that the Titans will face. And you talked about the struggles, particularly on third down for the Broncos offense. And it goes much deeper than I think, people want to put a face on it because it's easier to do. And Russell Wilson has not been, I think, playing at the level that we're accustomed to seeing from Russ. But I guess if you would summarize the Broncos offense for people who have not been watching it closely.
Well, let's put aside the run game for the moment.
Okay.
They'll try to run the ball, obviously. And they've been running it, erratically. It hasn't been a dominating feature on a week-to-week basis, clearly. But, I think Russell Wilson, if you go back through his Seattle career, obviously had a great career in Seattle and had played in 2 Super Bowls, won one. Wilson's always been a guy that throughout the course of a season, there were games where the Seattle offense did not do very well, and their defense was so good, and then Wilson would make some plays in the fourth quarter, and they would win games. So in other words, they might have 130 total yards until 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and their defense was so good, and the game was 10-10, and then Wilson would make, 2 of his special plays, which of course he's always capable of making, and they'd win.
Yeah.
Those plays are not happening the way they used to, whether he just isn't capable anymore, whether he's choosing not to leave the pocket as much. We don't know the answer to that, but they're not happening as much. So now what happens? What happens is you have to be more consistently precise from the pocket. And he's not been that. There have been throws he's left on the field. The other thing we never know with Russell Wilson, and I've spoken to people who've coached him, is, he's still 5'10", and there are certain things he can't see.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you think, oh, there's a throw to be made, and he probably can't see it. So he has just not been able to work through progressions. And I think a level that Nathaniel Hackett's offense probably demands. And because we haven't seen the second reaction movement plays the way we have in the past, there's just been an inconsistency to his game. I mean, he's under 60% completion percentage. In today's NFL, that's bad.
It's been pretty shocking to watch. And I do think that context, because it's not like people have forgotten what Russell Wilson's stature is, but on some of these throws, you're right, where you're looking at it after the fact or on the replay, and you're like, the tight end is sitting there right wide open in front of him, and he doesn't even look in that direction, or necessarily maybe can't see him, but you don't have the context for all of those things.
I know a coach who coached him, okay? And he told me that there were certain things you cannot call with Russell Wilson that are basic plays in everybody's playbook because he can't see those throws. Now, again, that doesn't mean he hasn't been a great player.
Sure.
But, coaching matters, and the way people are coached matters. I mean, I don't think right now there's a better marriage in the NFL, just right now, that's all I'm talking about, than Mike McDaniel and Tua. That's playing perfectly to Tua's strengths and almost eliminating his weaknesses.
Yeah.
Because Tua is not Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. So there are limitations to Tua, but you almost don't even know what they are now because of the way Mike McDaniel has orchestrated that offense, that Tua is playing at an incredibly high level. Literally snap after snap after snap. Coaching matters.
Oh, it's beautiful to watch. The Dolphins offense is so much fun, and they're just, I mean, they break these guys wide open. They clear out the middle of the field. They make it's exactly what you're saying.
And Tua is a great timing and anticipation thrower. That's his game. I mean, if you were sitting with me watching tape, Buck, I would be able to stop it literally when Tua would be starting his delivery, taking his hands off the ball, and I could say to you, he's throwing to him. And you'd go, he's throwing to him. Look where he is now. And then he throws it to a window, and the receiver just goes right into that window against zone. It's just pretty to watch.
And that's not been the case for Denver thus far. Now we'll see what adjustments they make after the bye and how much.
That's what we don't know. That's what we don't know. Yeah.
And they're coming off this London game. And the defense certainly keeps them in these games. Now they're without Bradley Chubb at this point, traded to Miami. But still playing high level defense. The thing though, Greg, that I think is concerning if you are a Broncos fan entering this matchup, even if the Titans offense has been significantly limited, is Justin Simmons. I know he got injured in that London game, and I know his practice status was uncertain as of this morning when I checked the latest coming out of Jeff Legwold over at ESPN. But it does appear that he has a knee sprain. But for the most part, I mean, Pat Surtain, that defense that they've got in Denver, they are really, really doing some special things, both against the run and against the pass.
Yeah, the run defense is critical because we know what the Titans are going to do.
Yeah.
And look, what happens when you come off a loss? Normally you go back to your staples. Now, it would not surprise me for a second to see some kind of gimmick, different play, that because I think Vrabel thinks like this at times, and just to try to jumpstart and maybe make an explosive play. But when all's said and done, what happens when you come off a loss? You go back to your staples. They're going to hand it off to Derrick Henry because they're going to feel, they're not going to state this publicly, obviously, but they're going to feel that the Broncos are not going to put up 30. They're going to feel that this game, they can control the pace and tempo of this game, and they can win this game playing the way they want to play.
Yeah, no, that's exactly that's exactly what it seemed. And it was interesting, Greg. I mean, Derek has had 62 carries coming into in the last 2 weeks, coming into the Chiefs game. They weren't running as effectively in the second half. The Chiefs did well to kind of neutralize a lot of that stuff and get them off the field or get them behind the sticks early on in the down. But it was kind of shocking for us to see up in the press box that, oh my God, he's over 100 yards, but he's still only got 17 carries.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, they didn't have the ball that long. They didn't run a lot of plays.
Right. And so I think that, as you mentioned, getting back to the style that they want to play, it was very much taken out of their hands, it felt like, in the second half, as well as the defense tried to keep them in it. I'm looking forward to watching how this game plays out. It doesn't necessarily scream the most exciting on paper, but these two defenses going up against the opposing offenses, it should be interesting if nothing else.
I think it's a little old school type football in this game, right now. The Titans kind of have to play that way, particularly if Malik Willis goes. So we'll see. But, if Willis goes, then you're going to, without question, see the Titans play this given way. Like I said, they may try to take a shot here and there. You have to. But for the most part, if they can control the game and their defense is controlling the game, then I don't think they're going to get flashy beyond just, some kind of trick, cool play, maybe twice in the game.
I would never accuse them of being flashy on offense, Greg. Not in my time here.
Right.
It was the NFL matchup show. Of course, set your DVRs. You can catch it live on Saturday mornings. You can catch it on ESPN Plus as well on demand. Greg, the games this weekend, there's a couple of interesting ones, and you mentioned Josh Allen earlier. His status still up in the air. McDermott said he's day-to-day with a UCL injury, but they've got the 7-1.
Again, it's funny. They always tell you never to look up anything on Google when it's about yourself, like if you're not feeling well. But I looked up UCL, and it doesn't seem to me that that's like a short-term thing. I mean, again, I don't know. It's not like I'm reading the MRI, and I wouldn't know how to read an MRI even if I saw one. So it doesn't matter. But the point is, everything I've read seems to suggest that that's not like a 1-week injury.
I try to avoid the WebMD stuff myself because you're right. You'll have a cold, you'll look it up, and it'll say that you're dying or something like that.
Exactly. So you try to avoid that stuff. Yeah.
But we will see. Anyway, the Vikings, though, Greg, I mean, I know they had to come back against the Commanders, but what they are doing and putting together on both sides of the ball, it's been a really interesting study, I'm sure, from your standpoint as well.
And I think getting TJ Hawkinson, that was one of the overlooked trades of a week ago, Buck, because we focused on a number of other trades, obviously. That seemed bigger. I think that's arguably one of the biggest trades at the trading deadline because Hawkinson, he was one of the very few guys that I've done, and I can't remember the others, but I remember Hawkinson specifically, in which on my evaluation sheet, and you've seen my evaluation sheets where I do strengths, weaknesses, transition, I did not have a weakness for him coming out of Iowa. Now, that didn't mean I thought he'd catch 90 balls and be the best tight end in the league year one. I just didn't think he had a defined weakness in his game.
Sure.
And I think that the fact that he caught 9 balls in his first game and they used him, to run some pretty good routes. He beat a corner on one. He's a really, really good player. And something that doesn't help fantasy people, but he's a really good blocker. And they run the ball. So I think he's a major pickup for that team.
Well, and certainly the opportunity is going to be there while Irv Smith is missing some time
Yep.
with injury. Elsewhere on the board, Greg, I have to assume that Chargers-Niners made the
Yep.
matchup
Yep.
show.
Yeah. Yeah. Niners are, I'm going to do actually a piece on the Niners pass rush. They do some really cool things on third down. So I'm doing a piece on that. And the Chargers, their pass game has been a little condensed. Simply, they don't have people.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen, from what I understand, is still day to day. So that must have been a pretty severe hamstring injury.
Oh, and their protection has been
less than stellar. Yes.
Less than stellar is the way that it is best described. The NFL Matchup Show, make sure you check it out. Greg, Sal Pal, and Darius Butler breaking it down, get you smarter for your weekend of NFL football. Greg, a great conversation as always, and I'll look forward to doing it again next week.
Yeah, that was a good one, Buck. I enjoyed it. Thanks so much.